Hi people, mine away from Bakirgan as always. This video is simply a reminder to people, specifically other magicians or practitioners, other occultists, you name it, but also towards the general public to a lesser extent. And as the header clearly states, you'll never be able to control everything when it comes to occultism and magic, and to a lesser extent, of course, from a neutral perspective in the world. My point is that, as a reminder, I simply want to remind people that God is the only one that controls everything. You, regardless of how hard you try, doesn't matter how advanced or how skilled you are, there will always be at least one or multiple factors, even that are unknown to you, that are responsible for you not succeeding in whatever aim you are trying to succeed in or whatever objective you try to accomplish. And I'm not just talking about magic or occultism, I'm simply referring to everything in general. Generally speaking, 9 out of 10 times when you're used to working in a specific way, it works 9 out of 10 times. But 1 out of 10 times, for example, you simply, I'm sorry, for example, you starting your car will start 99 out of 100 times, but there will be that 1% where your car does not start. You take it to a mechanic and he can't find anything wrong with it. There is no plausible explanation, and it just goes on and on and on. The same thing applies to occultism. Okay, you work with stuff that works for you in general, no problemo. It works 9 out of 10 times, but there will always be that one time that you can explain, so to speak, for reasons I just mentioned. There will always be at least one or several factors that lie outside your control. As a person, doesn't matter how high you ascend, okay, I mean, as an occultist or as a spiritual practitioner, as well as a general human being, doesn't matter how advanced you become in whatever venture you're involved or embroiled in, you'll never be able to advance to a level where you have like a level of omnipotence. No, no, no. God is the only one that's omnipotent. Doesn't matter how hard you try, there will always be something at least or several things that lie outside your control that you're not aware of that will be responsible for that 1 out of 100 times or 1 out of 10 times that you essentially fall flat on your face or you simply fail in your attempt to do whatever it is that you were doing. That's simply what I like to remind people. Sorry, that's simply what I'd like to remind people. Um, Another example that I can give is that you'll never know everything in the world. Doesn't matter how far science advances. It doesn't matter how far people advance in terms of education and knowledge and all of that. There will always be, there will always be things out there. That's why the world, the cosmos as a whole is infinite. Okay. God is the only one that is all of that infinity and everything else in between and then some. That's the definition of an omnipotence. But you as a person or as a being in the universe, you'll never be able to quote unquote know everything. Okay, doesn't matter how much you know, how much data you gather, etc. There's always going to be something. There will always be something, at least one thing, at the very least. Generally speaking, a multitude of things or a platitude of things that you simply won't know, and as a result, you will not be able to utilize whatever it is that you try to utilize. This is simply food for thought. And generally speaking, people just cut their losses and they move on. The reason I bring that up is because it's impractical to focus on that one little thing. Okay, again, it's like diagnosing a patient if you're a doctor, and the chances of a disease of the patient having a specific disease based on symptoms is less than 1%. You as a medical practitioner, you're not going to bother with that, because if you have to do the same thing for 10 patients, then you're going to be there the entire live long day. So no, you work with the default model. You simply check your hypothetical patients for the most common known diseases based on his or her symptoms, and it just goes on. Okay, that 1% anomaly, you literally leave that. You don't prioritize that whatsoever, because the chances of it happening are too low. Okay, so essentially, it's too bad for the patient that actually has that 1 in 100%. I mean, that 1% chance of contracting said disease based on his or her symptoms. And yeah, that's how the way the world works in by default in general. Okay, the general consensus is, if something works for 90% of the population and it doesn't for 10% of the population, then too bad for that 10%. But yeah, You're lost. I mean, too bad for you. Tough luck. Okay, the 10% needs to fend for themselves, or they need to find a way to cope with whatever issue it is that they're facing. That's my point. Okay, that's definitely something that you need to keep in mind, because that's how the universe works as a whole. And to my, to quote unquote, my fellow practitioners, it's the same thing for occult workings and magical workings. Doesn't matter how hard you try or what you do. Again, I'm not referring to myself. There is nothing that inspired me to record this video. This is just a general something that I'm more than aware of and or familiar with, obviously, in terms of knowledge and proficiency and all of that. So I simply thought to share it with people out there that for whom it just goes over their heads, or people that are completely unaware of what I'm saying. Just in any case, now you know. Just something you need to keep in mind. Okay, it's impractical. Okay, if you in your magical practice or occult practice, things that worked have worked for you a multitude of times will generally speaking work, but there will always be like one or two times where things don't work. And if you've got like five workings going on, and you have to literally go over every little thing in detail, then you can see what I'm getting at. Okay, then you're going to spend so much energy unnecessarily on something, on just knowing something or finding something out. So what generally speaking people do is they simply cut their losses. They simply say, hey, listen, it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, okay, too bad. Okay, I cut my losses and I move on. I'm not saying that you should specifically do so, but my point is, if you have the breathing room to actually investigate and go into detail in relation to why whatever you were doing didn't work or doesn't work, or it didn't work that specific time, that's fully understandable. Okay, that's comprehensible. But as long as you have the time and you're willing to waste, and or better said, spend the energy on it. But for something that you're already familiar with, something quite basic in terms of your occult practice or your magical practice or spiritual practice, whatever, and it doesn't work the 1 out of 10 times, you're like, huh, okay, works okay all the other times. Well, yeah, this one time it didn't work. Then you're generally speaking going to cut your losses, because if you have to do this stuff if you have to do whatever you were doing, if you had to do that shit like what 10 times a day, then obviously it's wildly impractical to literally say, hey, I'm gonna find out why it didn't work. Okay, that 1 out of 10 times. No, you're too busy with the other things, with the other stuff that you're doing, that you're involved in. So again, common sense just tells you you're just going to say, okay, listen, fine, so be it. So it works 9 out of 10 times. It's not foolproof, fine. Okay, and that is the case. Nothing is foolproof. Okay, like I said, God is the only one that can give you foolproofness, that can give you an absolute, literal, beyond a shadow of a doubt guarantee. You can only give that to yourself as well as someone else in a hypothetical or metaphorical way, provided that you're at that level, essentially my level. But you'll never be able to give someone a literal guarantee, because that doesn't exist. That exists only in the form of God, but not in the form of anyone else. I mean, no. Okay, there will always be something. Okay, even if it worked 100 times, 1,000 times, there can be that one time, 2 times, 3 times, more times where it doesn't work, and you simply are scratching your head. Because again, doesn't matter how hard you try, there will always be several factors in the universe that essentially were out of place, if you will, and that's why you failed. They weren't out of place all the other 100 times, 1,000 times that you did well, but they were out of place in that specific moment. That's my point. Okay, again, you'll never be able to find out everything, as in every single factor in relation to what you're doing. So by default, the most practical thing is what to do is what people do by default, is simply cut their losses. You simply chalk it up to, hey, stuff didn't work, or it's a failure, move on, end of story. That's all. And that's all, guys. Bye.